Hello folks and welcome to Tippcast with myself, Shane Stapleton, joined as ever by Shane Brophy, Head of Sport and Nina Guardian, and Liam Hogan as well. How are you doing, gents? Are you well?
Good now, Shane.
Liam?
Okay, Shane.
We've a load to get through here, all things Tipperary, but I suppose the place to start off, it probably has to be the weekend at Corrigan Park. Tipperary put up a very big scoreline against Antrim. You were there, Liam. Just give us your reflections on that match. Of course, it finished 4-28 to Tipperary, 2-16 to Antrim, and goals coming from Sean Ryan, Conor Bowe, Mark Keogh and Podge Campion.
Yeah, I was up there on Sunday, my first visit to Corrigan Park, and we'd up with the feeling that Tip would get it tough up in Corrigan Park when you play Antrim. Most counties have went through in over their history, but I felt that from the word go, Tipperary laid on a message. We're just not just here for the visit. We're here, and we'll get out of here as quick as possible. Notwithstanding that the hosts were very nice up there in Belfast, but you had 8 changes on the Tipperary team, and the newcomers were end up to tackle and say, "I want to be in your eye for this league semi-final against Limerick and for the championship down the road," and they certainly did. I mean, Sean Ryan had a fantastic game, 1-3 in the Heffernan, played very well. Delighted to see. I know he's on the team a long time. To see John McGrath playing a full game without going off injured. Delighted for Mark Keogh. Alan Tynan played very well, and Brian O'Mara, Michael Breen. I thought it was a good performance now by Tipperary, and by the 20th minute they were at the fourth game was over.
Shane, it's 5 wins from 5, and of course Liam mentions John McGrath there, and interestingly this week there was a little video clip put out by Tipperary GAA. It was a quick fire questions thing, and it was with Conor Stapleton, and he was asked who's going to have a big year this year, and he thought about it for a second. And then he said John McGrath. And it's not so long ago we wondered, would John McGrath be able to play this season after the Achilles injury? But it's a great sign to see him flying.
Oh, it is. I suppose we probably haven't seen the best of John McGrath in 4 years between the Achilles and he didn't have a great campaign in 2021. He had a great Accurate Club campaign in 21 where he was outstanding. And I suppose he was nearly becoming the forgotten man in the tip forward line, because I suppose Jake Morris is going well, Jason Ford, Mark Keogh, Gerard O'Connor, and then you were thinking, gee, and Seamus Callanan, and you're still thinking John McGrath at his best gets into that team every day of the week, but we sort of haven't seen him for the guts of 4 years. Even that 2019 campaign where we won the All-Ireland, he was sort of up and down in terms of his performances. Had a great All-Ireland final. Of course, we had that brain freeze in the semi-final, getting sent off. But to get 6 points in play now, I thought was excellent. And I suppose I'm not the Tipperary management, and I know that they'll pick their team accordingly for Saturday night. But I think that's the kind of a performance that says to John, you'd say to John, you're going back in again next Saturday. Like, you'd sort of give him the chance to put another build. Like, even going back to 21. He sort of felt he was struggling for his best form. He actually looked nervous for a few years there. He always looked under pressure. Not the way John McGrath at best. The whole thing comes natural to him. And I always thought looked like he was under pressure. But it'd be great now if he got the run Saturday night. Things went well for him, and you think a confident John McGrath going into the championship would be a huge asset to Tipperary.
Yeah, Liam, so I'm just looking through the scores here. Gerard O'Connor, he kept up his good scoring and free taking. He scored 8 points, one of those from play. As Shane mentioned there, John McGrath with 6 points from play plus a free. Sean Ryan with 1-3. Conor Bowe 1-1. Ender Heffernan coming up with 3 points as well. Was this performance very much in keeping with all the other performances we've seen so far? Tipperary running the ball through the lines, getting it to the man in the best position, isolating men inside and getting good ball into them.
Notwithstanding the one fact that Antrim, I felt, stood off the Tipperary team, and that would probably be the only blight I'd put on the performance, really. But no, you're right, Shane. It is up there with the best of the performances there all through the league.
And in terms of some of the players who got an opportunity, the likes of Joe Fogarty, he was one, Enda Heffernan coming back in. We've seen him a few times this year, Keane Kelly. How did some of the younger guys, or probably less experienced guys, get on? You said Sean Ryan was great.
Sean Ryan was very good. As I said in my report, Keane Kelly, there's no going back with that player. He's so energetic and he wants to get involved all the time. I feel his ball control at times lets him down, but he made the assist for the first goal, and albeit it was a very poor puck out by Ruth Elliott from Antrim, which Keane intercepted. And as you see when he's hurling with Kira One, he gives everything he can. Enda Heffernan played very well wing back. The two champions played sound at the half back line. Joe Fogarty scored 2 points. Probably we'd like to see a little bit more of Joe involved during the game. He's a very good hurler too. And I'm very pleased for Valentine. I thought he put in a huge effort on Sunday there, middle of the field. The other newcomers, Rice, Shelley did well in goals. His puck-outs were very good. And, I can't find a fault with much, really. I just based on what I saw, and notwithstanding the Antrim did stand up off of him for some of the first half, and Darren Deason said that to me after the game. He was a bit disappointed with Antrim, really, with his team. But I still stand that these players put their hand up to Liam Cahill and said, "Look, I want you to look my way when you're picking the team for the Limerick game and further down the road."
I can't hear you, Shane, there. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry, not sure what happened there. But I think it's all the more impressive that Tipperary put up this huge scoreline in a match that effectively didn't matter. Tip were through no matter what. And it's not a bad Antrim team either. Up until this game, they've been very competitive with pretty much everybody. So that the way that they have the internal competition going on in the Tipperary panel, despite all the injuries, this is a really good sign.
Yeah, I know that. I think the Tip's best win in the league was against Waterford, but I think the most noteworthy result, maybe in terms, I think was last Sunday, because I think in the 3 years Antrim have been back up in Division 1, I don't think anybody has given them a trimming like that on their own home patch. Like that they drew with Clare, or they beat Clare, or drew with Clare, they beat Wexford, they ran Kilkenny close, they ran Dublin close. So for Tip to go up there and, as Liam said, not go up for a jolly for the weekend. They were already looking ahead to a semi-final. They went up. They were ruthless. They had the game won after 15, 20 minutes. I'm sure some of that was down to Antrim, and I'm sure maybe Darren Gleeson probably would have been very, very disappointed, considering that maybe 12 months ago he wasn't able to put out his best team against Tip in Thurles, and he was hoping maybe this time, with the pressure off them, they could go out and perform, but that didn't happen. And I know they were missing Neil McManus and Keelan Malloy. I think Keelan Malloy would get on any team in the country. I think that lad is that good. He's very, very good. But Tip went up there. He put out a team where he had just enough experienced lads to put alongside the older guys. What is it, 31, 32 players he's tried out in the league now that Keane Kelly and Joe Fogarty got a run at the weekend. So, look, he's and I suppose he's intubated as much afterwards that they'll be going for it on Saturday night against Limerick. And I said it last week, I think to getting a crack at Limerick in a semi-final it's absolutely ideal, because I think if Tip ended up playing Cork, to be sort of pressure to go and beat Cork, and whereas there's no expectation going down to Limerick now. If Tip go down and win, outstanding. If they go down and compete well and fall short narrowly, it's expected, but you get the good performance. Look, the only thing we don't want is a bad beating, and we end the league on a downer, and that's happened to Tip a good few times going back to Liam Sheedy's time. And there's a kind of eerie similarity between I think this game and maybe when we went to Nolan Park in 2009 and Kilkenny gave us an awful trimming, whereas I'm kind of hoping this sort of a game will be like the league final in 2009 where Kilkenny were the top dogs and we met them, and while we lost an extra time, it sort of gave the whole group a belief that we could take down Kilkenny and stay improving. And I think that's the kind of thing I'm hoping for at the weekend.
Yeah, do you know, there's a lot of positives if you look at the stats for Tipperary, and obviously one side of the side that Tipperary are on in the league is, you know, probably has a few of the teams that are less likely to be challengers than the other side. You know, you have to kind of hold your hands up and say that. But if you're to just look baldly at the stats, the top scoring team in terms of goals in Division 1, Clare and Tipperary on 14 goals each. The fewest amount of goals conceded in Division 1, Tipperary with 3. The best scoring differential in Division 1, Tipperary plus 59, Clare next plus 36. So across the board, Liam, Tipperary are ticking all the boxes.
They are indeed, yeah. It sort of reminds me, Shane just alluded there to Liam McGrath, Liam Sheedy's first year as manager, and he got they won the league final in 2008, and then they played Kilkenny the following year in the semi-final down in Simple Stadium, and I think Liam Sheedy made a mark on that game. I remember he going up and he did sort of give Brian Cody a slight little jostle during the course of the game. And it also reminds me of the time when Babs came in as manager. He brought Tipperary up from Division 2 and they played Limerick in a league a semi-final. Going into the game not knowing what to expect, but were beaten narrowly that day. But everyone went away happy because Tip showed a bit of promise. And should we all know what happened in Killarney in '87 then. So the omens are good, all right, yeah. But I agree with Shane there. This game against Limerick on Saturday evening, we win, brilliant. If we lose, well, and give a good display. And the good display is very important now, because if we were bad beaten, it would set us back a little bit and sort of probably question ourselves as to where we're going. But look at fingers crossed. And
Liam, Ronan Maher came off early in the game. Was it just a precaution, or is there a concern he's out for this weekend?
I'd say it's a precaution. I think there's a long Ronan has a long road in 2023. Just making sure that everything was okay for maybe the semi-final against Limerick, was definitely with an eye to the first round against Clare in April. Probably Liam Cahill probably said to himself, "Look, I don't have to make things worse here for Ronan. I've lots of lads here sitting on the side that could take his place. I want to give everyone as much game time as possible." And I think he just used the occasion to do that.
Yeah, so in terms of goals scored, Limerick have only scored 4 so far this year, Shane. But as we saw in 2020, out of the 5 championship games they played, they only scored goals in one of them. So, and that was against Tipperary, actually. So it just shows that they can beat all comers without scoring goals. But they've, like Tipperary, used 30-plus players this year, and they're looking in root health. The one game they lost was against Cork, when they basically took off a load of their frontline players when they were in a very comfortable position. So all the suggestions are that Limerick are in top form.
They are, and I think I mentioned maybe hopefully the worst case scenario for Tip this weekend would be a heavy loss. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if John Kiley thinks, okay, and I think John Kiley, he works in Tip Town, he's on the border there, Galway, Leharlo. I think he has ferocious respect for Tipperary, and if he thinks he can maybe puncture the Tip balloon a small bit, I think he'll try and take it. But it's like there's Limerick, I suppose the overused cliche, Limerick never feared Tip, but there's ferocious respect, and I think there would be an element of that Jesus, like Tip could come out of nowhere and maybe do something, and like Kylie and Liam Cahill have come up with each other for the last 3 years at Waterford, so I wouldn't be surprised if Limerick go full strength this weekend, or maybe as close to their best 15. I think Young English and Shane O'Brien are playing tonight for Waterford, so that means they can't play on Saturday. They know that you can't play more than 3 games in 7 days, so I assume that means they can't play Saturday. So but I wouldn't be surprised if Limerick maybe think, okay, it's a league semi-final, but it do no harm maybe to get inside Tipperary's heads going into the summer, maybe put them down a step or two, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Arngillan scored 1-5 the other day against Wexford, and Wexford were, Dara Egan is delighted to have a long break, that he doesn't have any knockout games left in the league because he just needs to get players back out on the pitch. But Gallan scored 1-5, 5 of those were frees, but he's been a bane of Tipperary's existence in the last number of years. He's so good. I think this is a great chance for Tipperary to see, right, who will we put Mark and Aaron Gallan come this summer? Also, Kyle Hayes, what are we going to do about him, Liam? So, there's an awful lot to be gained from this game outside of the result and outside of maybe getting to a league final.
That's right, yeah. And the one thing I worry about Saturday night is playing under lights. Are all the players comfortable under, especially if it's a wet night, and the weather forecast from what we see isn't great going down towards the weekend, and that could decide the game. A turnover, a simple loss of possession, and hopefully Limerick will be losing possession, and Tipperary can benefit from it. That's the one thing I worry about. I prefer this game was played in daylight, and give everyone a fair chance.
Yeah, Shane, if I'm John Kiley, I'm probably delighted to get an opportunity to come up against Liam Cahill's Tip team. Obviously, he's come up against Liam Cahill before as Waterford manager. He's come up against these Tipperary players, or a lot of them, before. But as much as Liam Cahill is delighted to get a test, so too is John Kiley.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Yeah, I think, sure, what they played Cork and the other group, and they played Clare, they've come up against Watford the last few years. So, and look, I think he'd be first to know that, even though arguably Tip's best performance in the championship last year was against Limerick, Tip were well in that game after an hour, and give Limerick a lot. I thought tactically, probably Tip played pretty well in that game, but I think we would be a lot stronger on Saturday night, assuming if Tip go as strong as they can forward start, and maybe Bonner Maher start. And it'll be. I'm not getting too hung up on maybe what's Tip's best starting 15, particularly in the forward line, because I do think now that Liam Cahill has options. That does he need a certain type of a forward to play against Clare? But maybe against Cork, he might go a different way. Maybe he needs a different type of a forward to start. Mark Keogh can do a different job to a John McGrath or Sean Ryan. Just he can afford now maybe to mix up his forward line if he feels he needs something different for different opponents. So I definitely think Liam Cahill is going to take the opportunity this weekend to see. Look, if we assume the Limerick half-back line is going to have Kyle Hayes on one wing, who's going to be on him? Is it going to be Seamus Kennedy tracking him and going up and down the field with him? Is it who's going to be midfield? I thought Conor Stakelin played very well in midfield against Limerick last year. Will it be Alan Tynan again? Will he go back to Bonner Maher like he did against Waterford, or will we hold Bonner Maher in reserve for the summer and maybe give John McGrath another start? So it'd be fascinating to see how they go. Then you have the cornerback situation, we're assuming Cathal Barrett will be back for Clare, but Gallan at the top of his game is probably the hardest inside forward to mark. So if it's Johnny Ryan, or if it's Owen Conley, or could even be Brian O'Mara, he could mix this up a good few ways. You just know what way Liam Cahill could be thinking.
If Aaron Gallan and Seamus Flanagan are both starting in the full forward line in this game, and maybe they will in summer, I could see Breen and Brian O'Mara as the two lads to match up with them. They're both athletic, they're both strong, they're both decent in the air. So to me, that makes sense. And if that's the plan for the summer, I get it. Just even to look at some of the scorers.
Brian O'Mara, Shane, has been playing fantastic hurling this year. He's a brilliant man to dispossess an opponent. And I was just watching Tipperary against Waterford. I think they learned a lot from the game below in Mallow in the Munster League. The Tipperary forwards absolutely frustrated the living daylights out of the Waterford players, because every time a Waterford defender went upfield to provide a support, a Tipperary player was going with him, and he frustrated me. Yeah. He ran across his path. He did everything possible to frustrate him. And look at Liam Cahill has learned a lot from that Waterford game, and I'm sure he knows what he's going to do against Limerick as well.
Yeah. Okay. So just to look at the scores for, well, I'll start off with Limerick this year in the league, and they've used a lot of players, like we said. Tom Morrissey has 22 points, Mike Houlihan has 17, Donegal Dálig, he's come in 1-9, Kyle Hayes 1-6, Aaron Gallan 1-6. For Tipperary, then Jason Ford has scored 231, and only 19 of that is placed balls. Gerard O'Connor 33 points, 20 of those placed balls. So they're both scoring well from play. Then Jake Morris, 5-5. Conor Bowe, 3-3. John McGrath, 9 points, only one of those from a free. Shane, that all reads pretty well.
Oh, it does, yeah. But they're going to come up against the ultimate test this weekend, where Limerick get numbers back. Tom Morrissey, Gerard Hegarty probably spend as much time in the half back line as doing the half forward line. So, how are they? Tip need to play very, very quick, but they need to be precise. That they can't go back to the start of the second half against Waterford, where the ball went in direct, but it was coming out twice as quick. Ty de Borca had nearly hand was wore off him coming out with the ball. So they've got to be more precise with how they're sending the ball in, and then how they've got to make sure. I don't think Tip will be as naive as Galway were with Limerick when they sort of allow Barry Nash to be the free man. Barry Nash is so important off the sharp hookouts. He was originally a half forward. He's a ball player out of the corner back. So I think Tipperary will push. I think they'll push. Well, I think they won't allow him to be free, and I think they'll try and push right up in Limerick as much as they can. They'll probably allow maybe Seamus Kennedy and maybe Grod and Tynan maybe to drift back, but there could be as many as 4 forwards as maybe scoring forwards as all Tip will probably have in the field. But they've got to make sure that Barry Nash can't beat them.
Yeah, it's whetting my appetite for the game. River Power says Limerick and Kiley have a special hatred for Tip. They'll be out to destroy all Tip's momentum and confidence. That's a fact. Would you share that opinion, Liam, that Limerick want to drive Tip into the ground if they can?
Well, I'd say every chance. There's so much history between the two teams there now. Limerick, apart from Cork down through the years, are always a team that give Tipperary lots of it, and they don't want to. They're going for this 4 in a row now, and anything that will upset the momentum, they'll try to avoid it. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, Tipperary really do not want to see Limerick doing a 4 in a row, do they, Shane? I mean, motivation has got to be through the roof here.
Probably not, but I don't think that will even come into the players' minds. I think Liam Cahill will be. It's all about the next game improving, and I thought.
What are you eating?
Sorry.
What are you eating?
I have a sore throat, so I'm trying to stop him from coughing. But I just thought he had an interesting quote after the match last Sunday. I think when he was asked what had he learned last year from how Waterford transitioned from the end of the league to championship, and he said, "I've changed one thing with what I'm doing with Tip this year. We're going the very same physical work. We're doing the very same physical work, and we're in the business of winning games. We want to get back to winning national titles and national leagues. We're going to have a go starting next Saturday." He hasn't, from what I read there, he hasn't changed an awful lot from last year. They'll be going bullheaded. I suppose we probably know the one major thing that went wrong last year is that he worked Waterford too hard in the game after Limerick defeat before they played Cork. I don't think he's going to make that mistake again. Personally, I don't think winning the league had any detriment to what Waterford did last year. It was the 3 weeks after the Limerick game is what killed Waterford last year.
Yeah, not to mention, I think psychologically.
Tipperary, and they hurled very, very well in round 2 against Limerick in the Gaelic rounds, lost by a couple of points. So the winning the National League wasn't a detriment.
Yeah, I definitely think that just the psychological blow of losing to Limerick, when Limerick were down players, Waterford gave a big performance. I think that knocked them. And then obviously, all the talk is that they were overtrained after that. We'll move on to the minor hurlers. So you were there again last night, Liam, glutton for punishment. Clare 215, Tipperary 14 points. Tell us what was the occasion, like the conditions and so on.
First of all, there's no punishment. It was an absolute joy to be there, even though the weather was terrible. Persistent rain, nice breeze there, which helped Clare in the first half. Conditions were horrible for a game of hurling, but in fairness, I have to say, the young players of today, they are so skillful. I think if you had them hurling on a skating rink, to still manage to do that. And Clare certainly impressed me last night from what I see. Michael Collins went forward there, and an exciting prospect. Owen Gunning, right corner back, and Ronan Keane, two exciting prospects for Clare going forward. The game itself, Tipperary started off well. There were 3 points to 1 up ahead there after Sam Rowan scored a point in the 9th minute. And then Clare just got on top, and eventually they were 1-6 to 3 points ahead. And bear in mind the number of wides that Clare had hit at that stage, they would be well out of sight. And Harry Lucknan in the tip goals made a crucial save there just midway through the game. Could do nothing about the goal. And we were lucky maybe to be just 11 to 6 points down at half time. But in fairness, Tip came out in the second half, and despite a poor start to the second half, and when Clare scored 3 more points, they rallied and started to pick off the points. I feel that Robbie Ryan, who was a good free taker, might be better advised to go take his points every chance he gets. He went for 2 goals from close-in frees. Could have been crucial at the end. But Clare's second goal was a real killer. Tip had the ball, almost had the ball in the net at one end. Clare recovered, come up the field, and get a goal. Young Collins and Mark O'Brien involved again, and that was a real punch in the stomach to the Tipperary team. But still, they come back and came I think 6 points of them, and so we deserved to be closer maybe. For what we did in the second half, albeit that Clare hit a lot of wides and shooting from long distances out the field. And Clare are a promising team. They're on everyone's short list of making the top 3 this year anyway. So it's all to do for Tipperary. Playing Cork now in 2 weeks' time in Páirc Uí Chaoimh won't be an easy task for Tip. But I'm meeting James Woodlock after the game. He didn't seem down in the mouth about the game, and of course James, likes every challenge, and he'll take every challenge as it comes, and we'll wait and see.
Shane, like one of the big challenges for James Woodlock is basically pulling together a new team, because a lot of the lads who won the All-Ireland last year, well, the vast majority are gone. Yeah,
it's an entire new starting 15, if I'm not mistaken. I know the likes of Sam Rowan and Jamie Ormond came on as subs in a lot of the games, but like they're finding effectively a new starting 15 this year. And I think Clare probably had 5 survivors from the Munster final, and I think they have one more guy that's injured. He's still to come back. So look, that's when you're 17, that's a huge head start at minor level, like to have an experience. And look, we saw last year the difference in some of those Tip players from the end of March when they beat Waterford in the first round to the All-Ireland and final in July was dramatic. Like they just grew in confidence and belief, and the longer the time together and the better weather will always suit Tipperary. Like, so look, I have there's no point in panicking. Like it's one game, it's 4 games to try and get enough points to finish in the top 3. And I suppose the only gleaming thing was that Tip finished strongly to only lose by 7. You never know. Scoring difference could be important. Like, so you want to be keeping things as tight as you can. But look, there's no doubt it's going to be harder on. We don't know, essentially. James could have had a right good crop last year. Maybe this year's crop mightn't be as strong. But look, James is not going to panic. We saw last year he's very, very good at adapting, and we saw from 21 to 22 how he was able to remold a team. So look, they still have 3 games to go against Cork, Limerick, and Waterford in that order. Like, and look, it's like the senior, get into the top 3 whatever way you can, and then take it from there. When you're in a semi-final. So look, we all know that there's very, very little between any of the 5 counties in Munster minor hurling, or even under 20. Like, it's very tight.
Liam, the way Tipperary beat Clare in the penalty shootout last year, was that anything that was on the lips of people as you were going around the place? Would have surely provided some extra motivation for the banner.
When I reached the GA grounds last night, the first thing in my mind is to get from one side to the other without getting wet. Went over to the dugout, but look at knowing Clare down to the ears and talking to Clare people. they always want to get a crack at Tipperary. Everyone wants to get a crack at Tipperary. We're surrounded by 8 counties, you must remember, and I'm sure that penalty shootout last year was foremost in their mind. There's no doubt about that. But just to add there to what Shane said there about last year, Tipperary were down 7 points against Waterford in the first round last year, down in Dungarvan, and they came back and won. So once the weather gets dry, we'll really see what Tipperary work. But I wouldn't panic yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, thank you very much for joining us, Liam. We'll be doing it all again very soon.
Delighted to do it. Thank you, Shane.
Cheers, Liam.
Okay, brilliant to have Liam on there. So the under-20s, they were supposed to be playing tonight, but that's been put back. That'll be against Clare in a few days' time. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on the under-20s this year? Like, I thought Brendan Cummins had them playing a great brand of hurling last year. The style that he was playing with them last year, you can see it in the seniors this year, even though it's obviously Liam Cahill and it's Brendan Cummins. So I think it's very good in terms of like the production line coming forward. Those players should be able to step straight in. Probably disappointed to not go a little bit further last year because they were playing great stuff. And even the likes of Clare, they had Limerick bet until the last minute. Was it like a 30-yard free from Cathal O'Neill or 25-yard free? Never should have been scored. What are you expecting to see from the under-20s this year? And what's the sort of mood music around them?
I'd say there's a bit of expectation now in Tip next the 20s. Look, Brendan got the first year under his belt. Probably they came in under a low ebb last year. I think that the minor team in 19 was the performances weren't hectic. I know there's 3 years, a lot can change. So, but he probably had a bit of leeway there. And then look, he was excellent. They beat Waterford and they beat Cork and they got to that Munster final. Beat Kerry and got to the Munster final. Just bit of inexperience, or probably that Limerick team had a bit more experience in their armoury, likes of Colin Coughlin and Adam English, just got them over the line. But I thought the overall performances in the championship last year were excellent. And I suppose what's a big help to Brendan is, unlike James Woodlock, Brendan has 18 of last year's panel still underage. Plus, he's brought in 5 of the best of last year's minors in Paddy McCormick, Owen Horgan, Adam Daly. There's a couple more. I think there's 5 or 6 have been brought in. So, like, you can only imagine like how competitive that squad, Joe Egan, like how competitive that squad is going to be. And like we saw a good chunk of them there with Cashel and Turles through the Harty Cup. And then you look at Peter McGarry, who was excellent last year at this level. You think he's probably very close to maybe a senior panel. Dara Stapleton, the captain. Ben Curran had a great schools campaign as well. Jack Leamy, he had a very, very good campaign last year as well. The last 2 years, Sean Kennelly, we're nearly speaking about him for the last 4 or 5 years at underage. So I think it's a very, very strong panel. Like, I think the minimum Tip have got to be getting to. I think that's a panel that could win a Munster Championship, get to an All Ireland. I just think there's a bit more expectation on them, but I think Brendan will welcome that. And it's a tricky start against Clare. I think that Clare Light team last year had Shane Meehan and a couple of guys. I'm not hearing of any big names and that Clare squad at the moment. But look, Clare and Ennis are always tough to beat. But look, if Tip could go down there on Saturday and get the win, I suppose. I know there was a lot of annoyance in Tip last week that the match was moved. Like, it had been fixed 2 months ago for tonight in 6 Mile Bridge and was only changed last week, and it's gone to Saturday in Ennis. But I think it probably work out better that the match has been played in daylight on a good field in Ennis, and Tip will be hoping to get off to a winning start.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously we'll be talking more about that next week when we're reviewing the game. But when you look at this team, do you see any, and like we've seen it with Limerick, where there's some players who are kind of skirting between the senior and the under-20 panel, do you see any player there in the under-20s that might physically, never mind the skill of course, but physically be able to survive at senior level this year if called upon?
Not this year, right? I think you've probably got to be in the senior panel already to make an impact, like, unless somebody absolutely burns it up, like. So that's what I did think last year, the one that was probably good enough to be brought up and maybe make an impact with Peter McGarry. I thought he was very, very good, like. So but I do like unlike maybe the likes of Waterford and Clare, who have guys maybe doubling up and being senior panel, I do like the fact that Brendan Cummins has his own 35-man panel. There's none of them on the senior squad, so there's going to be no maybe having 3 matches in 7 days that the likes of the Limerick players and the Waterford players, and I'm not sure whether Cork is Christopher Joyce still eligible for under 20s this year. I'm not sure. Kieran Joyce, but like I'm not sure how like Limerick and Cork, or I'm not sure whether Clare have any guys that are doubling up. So that then I think I've said it on this show before. Unless you're an exceptional under 20, you're probably not going to feature on a senior team in terms of starting on the senior team. You might be like Cathal O'Neill and maybe Adam English on fringes, maybe getting the odd run. Maybe I think Waterford will probably have the biggest problem with that this year with Patrick Fitzgerald, so he's probably good enough to start for them in the championship. But
yeah, Patrick and Pádraig Fitzgerald, the two of them, yeah. Okay, so that we'll be talking more about that next week. We wanted to talk about the Tipperary footballers getting relegated the other day. So it was Tipperary 13 points, Offaly 2-14. And I suppose, bigger things were at play here in the sense that Liam Kearns had, of course, passed away during the week. He was up until obviously passing away, the Offaly manager, and previously had managed Tipperary and taken us on some great journeys, especially to the All-Ireland semi-final. But yeah, I mean, a tough occasion for both sets of players, but I think Tipperary kind of have to hold their hands up and accept that relegation is just how Tipperary have been playing this year.
Oh yeah, no, in fairness, David Power said that afterwards. He was making no excuses. Like, I suppose there was the results speak for themselves, like 5 defeats and a draw, like, and they're down with the game to spare. So look, it's disappointing. I suppose the minimum requirement, maybe the target this year, was to stay in Division 3 so that they'd have something to build on there next year. So I suppose like that this final scoreline was harsh on Tip. Like, he was like, it was 2 goals in injury time, sealed it for Offaly. Like, Tip were 14-13, arguably they played some of their best football at the league campaign. Like, and just the rub of the green went against them by all accounts. Liam McGrath was bundled over going through on goal. There was the smell of a black card and even a penalty. It wasn't awarded. We only got a 21-yard free. 2 minutes later, Liam McGrath is sin-binned himself for, I think, of a blocking tackle or a trip. And you think, how does the referee not give something that was maybe way more goal-scoring impact on a game, like, and it ends up the same player, then it gets done 2 minutes later. But look, Tip were pushing forward then after that and conceded a couple of goals on the counter-attack. Michael O'Reilly caught out of goals when he was pushing up the field. Like, so look, in one way it probably puts us out of our misery, because with Antrim winning, it would have meant Tip would have had to go to Westmeath and win again next weekend and maybe hope Antrim lost to Longford, and that was going to be tough. Like, Longford have nothing to play for now. I know Westmeath have nothing to play for either this Sunday. They're not in the relegation shake-up, or sorry, not in the promotion shake-up. So look, I think Tip have just got to dust themselves down and maybe use the Westmeath game, try and regather themselves for the championship. Hopefully get Stephen O'Brien back. I suppose probably the big bonus, maybe the big plus for the last couple of games has been the impact of Stephen Quirk. He was on the minor team in 2015 that got to the All-Ireland, sort of like his brother Philip, a bit bedeviled with injuries since then, but like, he's a big unit. He was very effective off the bench against Fermanagh in round 5. Then started last weekend against Offaly, got 3 points from play. So like, you think you got to and try and pick the positives. Like, hopefully go away now, try and get a bit of momentum. Like, they have a very winnable game in the first round of the Munster Championship against Waterford. The prize for that is to go to Killarney or Tralee to place Kerry. So look, realistically, Tip are looking at a Tailteann Cup campaign and probably trying to build back up the confidence levels and try maybe to end the year on a high, maybe get to the knockout stages of the Tailteann Cup would be, from this vantage point, would be a good year for Tipperary.
Yeah, CK Streaming says the way Tip footballers are playing, they won't beat Waterford in the Munster Championship, and if they do get over that, you'd fear for them big time below Killarney in a Munster semi-final. So yeah, like there's this Tip obviously have to get to a Munster final to avoid the Tailteann Cup, but it probably is the best place for Tipperary this year. Yeah,
it is. There's no, but I mean, like, it's sort of the ludicrous thing of the new system where one of Sligo, Leitrim or London are going to end up in the Sam Maguire, but where I'd say they'd much prefer to end up in the Tailteann Cup and realistically have a chance of winning something. Okay, one of the three will get to play in a Connacht final and it'll be a great occasion for them, but they're probably going to end up getting a clipping from either Mayo, Galway or Roscommon. So I do think I do think somebody in Croke Park has got to sit down and look at every regulation within league and championship and tidy up the anomalies, because there's too many. Like, you have the ludicrous situation this weekend for Cork and Tip, the two teams that won their groups in the hurling league, both have to play semi-finals away from home. Like, what's that about? Like, because of home and away and home and away and home and away agreements. Like, just stick something in the regulations at the start of the year. Group winners get to host the semi-final. That would have do away with all these tosses and not like. That's one thing I'd love to see Jarlath Burns do with his new next committee appointments is don't just be jobs for the boys and the most deserving guy I met around the country. Get people in there who actually will improve the thing. You look at this Sunday. There's the final round of Football League. Division 4 starting at 1 o'clock. Division 1 is at 1:45. Divisions 2 and 3 is at 2 o'clock. Why can they not have a throw-in time at 1 and 1 at 3 and let TG Cahir show a live, maybe Sligo and Antrim at 1, show maybe Dublin and Louth at 3 o'clock? You could have played the other hurling semi-final on the Saturday. Like, it's just it could be
beggars belief.
The whole thing. It needs actually somebody. I actually think the chairperson of the fixtures committee in Croke Park needs to be full-time. It needs to have somebody with a maths background or a scheduling background who can see who can see these things and think, okay, this would suit us best. Like, it's crazy. Like, the last few years, the final day of the Football League has been absolutely brilliant. If they'd only maybe stretch it out where you don't have the 4 divisions practically all playing each other games at the same time. Like as I said, Leitrim and Sligo going from promotion in Division 4. That's huge. Like, Louth and Dublin, I think, has been shown. But then you have some of the big games up Tyrone and Armagh. Probably one of them is going to get relegated if they lose. Like, so, like, it'd be one thing you'd just love to see them do. Just make it look more professional in terms of scheduling, throw-in times. Just help the whole thing out.
And even so whoever wins the 2 hurling league semi-finals this weekend, they're then having to play a championship very close to the start of the Munster Championship or the Leinster Hurling Championship. So why on earth do we even have semi-finals? Tipperary and Cork finished top. Yeah. They should basically go straight into a league final at this stage. And then one other thing is, when you're talking about if you win your league or win your group or whatever, you should get home advantage. I'd say the same in the Munster and the Leinster. Whoever finishes top, they get to decide where the provincial final is. Obviously, you're not going to play it in a tiny venue if you get to a Leinster final. No,
probably will be Croke Park. I remember 2019 was the perfect case in point. Tip have been the only county, I think, that have gone 4 for 4, I think, in the round robin. And Munster, what was their reward? They went into the backyard of the All-Ireland champions who were baying for blood, and then they ended up being hockeyed, these things matter, and there's so many, okay, you might think, oh, what if Clare and Waterford finished top? Okay, Cusack Park and Walsh Park can't host the final, but you allow them the power to nominate which ground they want to play it in. Clare might actually prefer to play Limerick in the Gaelic grounds for maybe the supporters rather than drive the whole way to hurlers. Like, you just I'd love to see.
It's a reward,
there's things with the National Hurling League too. Like, I'd love to see maybe for the growth of the game, Tip and Limerick next year. Okay, Tip and Limerick, you're not playing in Thurles or Limerick. We're taking that match up to Castlebar on a weekend. You don't think that Mayo hurling fans might think, geez, Tip and Limerick are in town, we'll go in. We'll go get 15,000, 20,000, the novelty of a 2 of the best hurling team. Like that, I think things like that, or maybe Kilkenny and Clare go up to Letterkenny on a weekend. I'd love to see a bit of those sort of things, like thinking outside of the box and how you grow the game.
Yeah, I do think that's interesting. I think a lot of people on the face of it would balk at it, but think it's interesting to
Well,
maybe try.
I would just think maybe a couple of games every year, where maybe if you give Tip and Limerick, say, 3 months' notice, say you won't be playing in Limerick or Thurles that game, we'll be taking it to Oma. It gives to the supporters think, God, we'll go up there for the weekend. Like a lot of people I knew went to Belfast last weekend just because it was a novel. They'd never been up there. I know it'll annoy maybe the diehards who think, God, they don't want to go too far for a match, but like you've got to look at the bigger picture too, like, and grow the game.
Yeah, maybe if it was just once in a year, a team was told you'll have to travel.
Maybe take one game or maybe two and just move them around the country, like
just
5 rounds.
And just stagger them so that you've got a couple of them every year. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. The Tipperary Camogie team, so at 120 to 7 points win over Clare. If memory serves me correctly, the teams drew last year in the champion. Was it the league or the championship? I think it was championship.
Oh.
So this is quite a turnaround. Like Dennis Kelly must be very happy. Like the only defeat coming against Cork, and that was narrow. And when you consider that Cork battered Kilkenny 23 points to 110, it's looking good.
Yeah, it is now. I think I said last week that I thought the Clare game was the key one for me in terms of a barometer, because they actually played 3 times last year. They drew twice and Clare won the Munster semi-final replay. So like Tip weren't able to beat them last year, but then to come out last weekend and to be 14-0 up at half time, like it looked like to me that the Tip team were thinking we had enough of Clare maybe running rings around us last year. We're going to set down a marker here, and like that was impressive. Now, like to 120 to 7 points, just shows you the direction they're going in. Like they're in a great position now. Like they've 1 game to go. If they beat Kilkenny on Sunday, they're in a league final. And like I think this Tip team for years needs to get to a final of something just to get to the next step. They've lost so many semi-finals and Munster semi-finals, and I think this would be so important for this team. It won't be defining, but like if they in the first year of Dennis Kelly and his backroom to get to a league final, that would be a massive step forward in confidence and just the mental preparation and playing in a league final. So like hopefully they get it done. If they beat Kilkenny on Saturday, they're through. That's going to be tricky, even though Kilkenny are struggling a bit. You know, Kilkenny will probably rise through that the weekend. Kilkenny can't qualify, but even at that, if Tip don't win, if Cork beat Galway on Sunday, Tip would still go through on score difference. In Camogie, I was just double checking. Even though Tip and Galway are tied, it's not head-to-head. The score difference, Tip's score difference is way ahead of Galway at the moment, and you're probably looking at the way Cork are playing, that Cork would probably be fancy to beat Galway on Sunday. So, but look, I think Tip will be going down to Pilltown on Saturday afternoon, fully intent on doing handling their own business, getting the win over Kilkenny, which would be like if Tip come out of this league, getting to a league final, having beaten Kilkenny and Galway in the group stages, and having lost to Cork and maybe gotten a second run at Cork in the league final. God, that's great preparation for championship. You're gone quiet to me there, Shane, again.
Some of the players who stood out the other day for Tipperary, Niamh Tracy with 4 points, Caoimhe Maher with 1-2, Emer McGrath 4 points. And like you'd mentioned, Tip teams not getting to finals. Even the 1 year they did, wasn't it 2020?
Never got to play it.
Never got to play it, yeah. So in the ladies' football, Tip are looking to join Armagh in the final. So very impressive victory again, 2-15 to 1-7 against Tyrone.
Yeah, it's a good solid win. Like Tyrone probably struggling a bit this year in Division 2, but look, like by all accounts, Tip's first half performance was as good as they've had in the campaign. So look, it sets up the game against Armagh this weekend back in Fethard. Like it's Armagh are already through to the league final, but Tip need to get at least a draw out of this, because if they're 3 points ahead of Laois, but if Tip lose and Laois win, Laois go through on the head-to-head. So you're looking at Tip have the harder game this weekend, and I suppose it all depends on what Armagh decide to do. It's a long old trek for an Armagh team that already know they're the league final. Will they rest players? Will they go hard? There's talk that maybe Tip will be without Anna Rose Kennedy for the game. She got injured against Tyrone. I think she was selected on the higher education, Connor Cup team of the year. Like that that shows the level of play she's performing with this year. Like, so, look, fingers crossed Tipperary get the result they need and get into that league final against Armagh, and because that final will determine who gets promoted. Like, only the league winner goes up. So pivotal game for Tip this weekend. Like, it's arguably the biggest game of their year so far.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know one of the coaches on the Armagh backroom team there with the ladies. He was also coaching with me with the UCD Fresher Hurlers this past year. So he'll be looking to see what he can learn from the match this weekend, because obviously Tip will have to put their best foot forward, and Armagh don't need a result. So anything else before we finish up?
Not really, no. So just looking at all this bloody rain. I hope it's gone before Saturday night. Like, so it is.
It's unreal up here in Dublin. It's actually sunny. I'm thinking of going around in a t-shirt.
It's on the way now. Up to you. So no, I think Saturday night will be good. Now, if the weather is good, I think you could get a right good crowd in there, because I think Tip will be bullish. I think Limerick will maybe sense a little. Tipper, we've got to put Tip back in their box here a small bit. Like, so, really looking forward to Saturday night. Like, I think it'll be one to look forward to.
Yeah, we're too arrogant and ignorant to be put back in our box, though, to be fair, aren't we?
Sure, like everybody's saying we're back, but sure, were we ever gone away? Like,
oh, Jesus Christ, they'll be after us now. Okay, thanks very much, Shane. We'll be seeing you again next week.
Talk to you later.